when you're, I mean, it's better in that matchup for sure, but you're losing out percentage point elsewhere. Okay, let's go for run 2. And that's a very reasonable hand. Now it's showing up. Let's see how it performs in this so far still unknown matchup. See if we can make use of the enlistment and if it's going to be better or worse than bet to screech here. Okay, swamp. I think mono black we're like slightly advantaged because we have more monarch action going on. And the token making is really strong against that spot removal. If it's blue-black again, then it's basically just a repeat of the previous match, where we are really behind game 1 and then slightly ahead post-board. Well, discarding this is pretty useful, right? We can discard our artifact land, which means we only discard 1 card, but the land actually seems pretty useful here. It's a close one. So I think it's either Zen's enlistment plus one of the removal. Well, that's pretty obvious, but like, probably the one of the journeys, like these two together, or just the Ancient Den. And then with Ancient Den, I'm hoping to find like a Boros Garrison or something to make up for my lack of land drops. I think discarding 2 is actually still correct. But yeah, it's very tempting to just throw an artifact away because it is already card advantage. I've literally run it for 1 match, and this the point of this league is to try out a bunch of things. So yeah, I was interested to see how good Zen's enlistment is, and I have so far never cast one. But yeah, in the previous match it would have been great, so it just never got to happen, but I was constantly looking for it. And yeah, in this matchup it could also be great at some point. I could have potentially ran this out so that if I get to 5 lands I already start fetching back Zen's enlistments. Here I was intending to just cycle it because I would want to find Core Skyfisher or Glinthawk or Boros Garrison, anything that allows me to create card advantage instead of just putting this down as a tapped land. No, okay, never mind. Okay, so Zen's enlistment is 0 for 2 for doing anything useful, though in both of the matchups it seemed to be something with great potential and something that I was hoping to do. It just never happened so far. It is pretty spicy, but I'm not yet convinced that it's better than Battle Screech, because the ability to block flyers, especially in the blue-red Delver matchup, is very important. Can occasionally also come up against Vault Scourge and Solana Ledgewalker, though that's much more rare, especially because those are often going to be outclassing your birds in size. But yeah, against all the controlling matchups, especially those that are capable of outlasting your Monarch by removing all of your threats, their Zen's enlistment seems to be a pretty great addition. My opponent just took an extra point of damage for no real reason. They could have responded to my Thraben Inspector by Geth verdicting me, and instead they let it resolve and then did it in combat. I guess I still hadn't committed to the clue at that point. Do I want to journey this? Because I do have a bunch of burn. This is already 11 points of burn, but 11 is still quite a bit away. I think I want to hold on to the journey for a Grey Merchant. Yeah, I think so. Keep these in hand for burn damage, and then the journey is what I use for a 4 toughness creature. Otherwise, if I journey this now, then I have to end up spending a Galvanic Blast on a 4 toughness creature, and then I'm still ending up with less direct damage than I would otherwise. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's working towards my goal. Well, Grey Merchant is still going to help them stabilize out of burn range, so that would be unfortunate. Well, I guess I'll journey this one. Keep getting chip damage in with the Inspector. Want to hold on to this Forgotten Cave now that my Zen's Enlistment is gone. I don't really have much of a way of turning it into a threat anymore, but I can obviously cycle it. Which is the point. To find my third Galvanic Blast, maybe. We'll see. Or find a Palace Sentinels, that would also be the dream. Read the Bones is interesting. I have not really seen anyone run Read the Bones in mono black. Usually Read the Bones is the card that the Mardu or Black Red or something control decks run because they can't really support the double black casting cost of Sign in Blood, but they are running both of them alongside each other, which is pretty interesting. Wait, no, that was a bad mistake though. I should have played Mountain and kept this in hand for Wrench Mine. Hope that doesn't backfire, because yeah, we would always want to have one artifact land in my hand to discard to Wrench Mine and keep these two Galvanic Blasts protected, so that was a huge mistake. But yeah, they seem to be running both of the draw spells, which is interesting. Maybe they don't play Phyrexian Rager, or maybe they're just going much deeper on draw spells, but I'm not certain how you would make space in your deck for all of that. Definitely very interesting. Come on, third Galvanic Blast. Well, I guess I got to make up for my mistake and get a new artifact land into my hand. Still flooding out again. I am playing 21, right? Okay, it is 21, so it's just like a variance that I'm flooding out this badly when previously I had a tournament run with 21 and a tournament run with 22, none of which made me flood out this badly. Yeah. Just when things are not going your way, you question your logic, but yeah, it seems like everything is alright in terms of percentages and like numbers of lands. It's just I'm drawing the wrong amount. Sure. Multiple Bojuka Box seems very sketchy to me. Like, Bojuka Box is like at an all-time low in usability because so few decks are using their graveyard. And the decks that are using their graveyard are usually the worst ones. But sure. An amazing quote from LSV. What is it? I mean, no one likes Mana Screw, but I also don't like Mana Flood. I mean, they are important parts of keeping Magic the Gathering a healthy game. They are important parts of the design philosophy and important for making new players enjoy the game. Like, I'm aware why they exist and why they are important and why I should not worry about them too much. Oh, god damn. Well, I guess at this point I have to give up on the burn plan. I have to hope I like Core Skyfisher back my Journey to Nowhere. Wait, oh, this is actually pretty great for me. Oh, I should have done that at end of turn. I overlooked the interaction. and I could have done that previously. They just allowed me to kill their angler, and they did that at end of turn already, and I just missed the fact that I can deal 5 to it, because the Grey Merchant doesn't matter that much. So, like, if I train a few Core Skyfishers into each other and then Palace Sentinels, I'm still in a great position. Okay. Like, I'm dealing with all of what they're doing. I'm just not really gaining an advantage while doing it. And we are, like, similarly good at top decking. Like, they have some Read the Bones and Sign-in Bugs and Friction Ragers, and I have some Core Skyfishers and Glinthawks and Palace Sentinels, and maybe they have 3 Bojuka Bogs. What are you doing? I would rather play 0 Bojuka Bogs than 3, but okay. There we go. There we go, things are looking up. I mean, my Glinthawk is likely to die, but it replaces itself, so I have an extra land in my hand afterwards. No, but for real, I can chain spell into spell into spell if things are going well. And then the fact that they're killing it shouldn't matter, because they will run out of cards eventually. They're also on only 2 cards in hand and flooding out pretty badly, so both of us are flooding out very badly. And also, my opponent has some pretty miserable top decks in their deck. If they ever draw like Wrench Mind or something, it's going to be absolutely useless. Now this is the type of draw where I would prefer for this Ancient Den to be on the board though, because now if I draw Palace Sentinels, I could cast it with the second, like have 3 on the board already, play this as a 4th one in Palace Sentinels. So whenever you start chaining, then the lands on the board are actually important. And when you're like flooding out and not casting any spells, then keeping them in hand seems promising for Wrench Mind. No, the creator of Gary, I think, is what Loading Ready Run, or like Friday Nights is their video series. Okay, we got our prizes for the Vintage Challenge. Pretty productive Saturday, even though wait, I can check who won actually. Let me do that as well. Even though now I'm screwing up the recording a little bit, but where's the Vintage Challenge? Can we congratulate Rich? Nope. Rich lost in the semifinals. Kozil won against Eroxus. 2 minutes? Did they split, or was it just a completely one-sided affair? Oh, Dredge, I see. Okay, he tinkered for Blightsteel against Dredge. Okay, so I guess Paradoxical wins against Dredge. I think we also played against one of these, maybe even both. Let me see. In the earlier rounds, no. No, we played against Dredge and Paradoxical, neither of the players. Sure. Okay, so Paradoxical wins against... I did play against the Power 9 though. Paradoxical wins against Dredge. Blue-red control the Power 9. What was he playing? Oh, also Paradoxical, I think. Then me on shops. Montolio on shops. Wow. Okay. Montolio is also crushing it. Let's sacrifice this. Come on. Well, any creature that replaces itself I'm happy with. But really Palace Sentinels. My opponent's deck is not really set up to ever beat the Palace Sentinels. They either Thorn of the Black Rose in the exact next turn, or they're dead on the spot. Sweet. Well, at least this Thraben Spectre eats up the Chainer's Edict flashback. Yeah, I'm not sure about the serrated arrows in the main deck. Like, it's very good in the matchups between the top decks. Like, if you're trying to play against Tireless Tribe and Blue Red Delver, it's great. And I would want to have it in my main deck so that my sideboard has more space and I can like address those matchups while not costing myself too much sideboard space. But like if you're playing against like mono black, blue black, boggles, there's just so many downsides to having serrated arrows in your main deck. I think I would just want 2 or 3 in the sideboard and don't main deck them, because like this game I haven't drawn them yet, but as soon as I draw them I'm gonna make a pretty sad face and go like, why did I put this into my main deck? This was a horrible idea. And like, of course, when my opponent goes like Quirion Ranger and I go serrated arrows, kill your Quirion Ranger, nice card, or like they play a Tireless Tribe and I put a -1/-1 counter on it and they can never win. Especially in game 1, if I resolve serrated arrows, they can like literally never win. Then in those cases it feels pretty amazing, so I'm not sure what percentage of the metagame it has to be amazing against for me to be willing to run the card. But at the moment it still feels pretty sketchy because it's kind of like a coin flip whether the card is insane or awful. Okay, I'm building a huge board here. My opponent basically has to have Pestilence or otherwise they're dead. This is what I've been waiting on the entire time. All this time flooding out just so we finally get to flood the board with 4 flyers that all draw a card against my opponent's 1/1 removal deck. Just mono Moldrifter army. What? That is in your deck as well? I have no idea how my opponent finds space for all of this. Like, the card isn't that bad, but they have Read the Bones and Dust Legion Zealot, which are both draw spells that are usually not in the stock lists of these mono black control decks. They have to have made room for that somehow. I assume they just like don't have Thorn of the Black Rose, don't have Oubliette, Pestilence, those cards, so lower on expensive cards basically, running like a budget version. And then also potentially no Phyrexian Rager if you're running those 2 replacements, but Rager just seems better to me than Dust Legion Zealot. Sure, it's more expensive, but you want to kill everything that your opponent plays and then win with your dorky creatures. And then the difference between a 1/1 trying to win and a 2/2 trying to win is a huge deal. Like, you're doubling your clock. That gives your opponent so much fewer draw steps to find additional threats. So I'm not certain if like the mana that you're saving is really worth it, having the less efficient body. Glittering red, sure. Yeah, they're pretty dead. Wait, that was a mistake though. I mean, not a big one, but I should have probably stopped this from attacking so that they can't attack and then kill my Palisanders with the removal spell. Though I guess they have to still deal with my flyers. Even if they take the Monarch away from me, I would still be regaining it the following turn. And if my flyers stay alive, that's good enough for me. So maybe it was not a big deal. Though I guess Tendrils of Corruption or something could help my opponent stabilize in this. Also finding Pestilence is a big deal. So probably, well, no longer is a big deal because now they don't have the life total to work with to activate Pestilence anymore, but the previous turn it would have been a concern. They would have to go Tendrils of Corruption into Pestilence. Okay, so Serrated Arrow is definitely coming out. Reaping the Graves is pretty great, though my opponent has at least 3 Bojuka Box in their deck, maybe even more. So it can occasionally be pretty sketchy. Prismatic Strength should also be coming out. Usually I would board in Core Sanctifiers for Oubliette and Pestilence, but it looked like my opponent's deck list had neither of those, or I mean, we went through a little over half the decks on both sides and then they didn't show me any of them. So I'm not certain if that means I should be less concerned about them. Yeah, maybe like 2 lone missionaries and the core sanctifier. Life gaining against them also isn't all that relevant, but it just gives me another threat rather than another like, no, probably like 2 sanctifiers, 1 missionary. Even if I end up not destroying anything, they're still like disfigure proof beaters that I can use to block their chittering reds and gray merchants and all of that stuff. Though I could also see like 1 serrated arrows being fine, because it helps me Galvanic Blast. Wait, I have Cracked and Shaman. Oh, probably I don't want. No, too late. Yeah, probably I want 1 serrated arrows in the main deck still. In the deck still, because it helps me. Like I can Lightning Bolt Grey Merchant. I can Galvanic Blast Gurmag Angler once I put a -1/-1 counter on them. So even though the serrated arrows itself doesn't trade for. It's for elves. It's decent against blue red delver. It's very important for boggles. It's useful against tireless tribe. It has a bunch of applications, but I'm also just trying it out to see how I like it. This entire list is very experimental, and I threw a bunch of card choices that I was playing with in my head into it, just to see how they all mesh together and which of them I like and which I don't. So I wouldn't recommend that you just play the list that I'm currently playing. If you want something like proven and good, just play what I played last week. But yeah, this is like my planning for tomorrow, whether I want to make some crazy changes or not, and which of them I'd like or dislike. Wait, what? I thought this also did. Wait, did I read the card wrong? Card, Krark. I thought it also did damage to flyers, or maybe I'm wrong. That's Krark, Clan, Shaman. It's never come up for me. Oh wait, without flying, you're right. How the hell does that never come up for me? Yeah, I guess it's awful against blue red delver. It's pretty important against the elves matchup though. See, that's why we test. I had it in my sideboard a lot, but I never boarded it in against Delver. I did board it in a lot against Elves, and it just completely changes the way that you can approach your Elves matchup. Yeah, the Electricity, the problem is that it doesn't really solve the Elf matchup, and it can often be too slow against Boggles, as well as being not that great against Stompy, but yeah, I just want to try things out. I don't know. Yeah, I had the main deck Electricity 2 weeks ago. I'm not certain, I might run it back. Yeah, 2 weeks ago I had main deck Electricity, 1 week ago I had the 22nd land, which I was also pretty happy with. Though right now I'm flooding out with 21 pretty hard, so it's not the greatest time to talk about that being a good choice. That's a good draw though. Though not this turn I would be running it into Geth Verdict. I think I'll just run out Alchemist Vial and keep slow rolling this a little bit so that my opponent's removal spells line up poorly with my threats, so that the turn where they really want to be casting removal and the turn where they really want to be running out their bigger creatures kind of overlap. The biggest downside to this is that they can run out Thorn of the Black Rose and potentially just become the Monarch and take over the game. Though if I run the Core Skyfisher into an end of turn removal spell, the same thing still happens. I did much of that standardizing myself. Like, I think I'm partially to blame for that, but I still feel like there's a lot of room to tinker with the list, much more so than other people are doing. I think there's a lot of nonsense still being played that probably shouldn't be in it, but I also feel like there's cards that have potential that are not getting enough recognition, especially Serrated Arrows I think is insane, though I think putting it into the main deck is not that great. Okay, well there was the 2-mana remove spell that we were kinda expecting. I'll run this out instead of recasting my draw spell, just to make Thorn of the Black Rose. Well, they probably don't have it, because they would have just snapped it turn 4. And also it seems like they're running a budget list, so it's just too expensive. Well, we'll see. I don't know, I just don't like the token versions at all, which are still pretty popular. Like Kodotha. Actual Kodotha. Oh my. Now I played. Like, this was my only untapped land, so I played it, and now I don't get to discard it, which is the card that I really want to discard. I can discard Prophetic Prism, but it's also pretty medium. Yeah, I think it's still better than discarding both of my lands, but it's close. Maybe discarding both of my lands is actually better. Really would have liked to discard this Ancient Den. Maybe I was too greedy and should have just went like Core Skyfisher, tapped land, bounce land or something. Now you show up, Ancient Den. Now you show up. Nah. I think I want my removal still. Makes it very difficult for my opponent to come up with counterplay. I think discarding Prism was okay, but yeah. Yeah, Crack Bolt seems okay as well, but I think I wanted my removal spells. I think Core Sanctifier Crack was actually a consideration, a very real consideration. I might have to double board this at some point, though I would like to I would prefer to deal with it with Journey, of course, or like to not do that. Maybe run out Thraben Inspector and then Galvanic Blasted post-combat. Yeah, I was considering running the 4th Sentinels, but they are pretty awkward when you're being beaten down. In these types of matchups, it's definitely the case that you want 4th Sentinels. I also had a 4th Sentinel in my sideboard last week, so that I could board them in against all the matchups that can never beat a Monarch, which Mono Black and Blue Black definitely. Well, I guess I just died with the Monarch because I decked myself, but that was kind of a corner case. And that was also the result of my deck experimentation, more than that being a normal occurrence in the matchup. But yeah, I definitely feel like the 4th Palace Sentinels had some merit, but there's matchups where you want 0 and there's matchups where you want 4, so it's difficult to find a main deck number that is correct, and that I think 3 is probably the main deck number that makes the most sense, because it does give you the upside of drawing it when you need it most often, while not having the fail case of having 2 in your hand when they're unplayable as often. Yeah, I did have the 4th one and I was pretty happy with it, but now I needed sideboard space to experiment. Like, I wanted to try out more arrows, so I needed some sideboard space opened up. Okay, now things are looking a little better. I think I'm still willing to take all this damage. No, that's probably just nonsense. I should just keep this open and then try to board it. And just pretend like I want to crack the clue or something. I think, yeah, that's the type of nonsense that I was talking about. I think Seeker of the Way is a very reasonable card and does help some of your aggressive matchups without being completely dead in the controlling matchups. You have a threat that is something that Blue Black and Mono Black and so on still have to respect. Though it does just run into Disfigure for no value, so it's not even great there. But like, it's not completely embarrassing against decks that are controlling, but it also shores up the aggressive matchups. So I think Secret of the Race is very reasonable, though I don't really find space for it right now, because it's a card that doesn't generate any value on its own. But I think Searing Blaze is complete nonsense. I think it's terrible for the mana base. I think it doesn't fit the game plan at all. Yeah, just feels like a much worse Journey to Nowhere, and it feels like misunderstanding what the deck is trying to do. You're not really an aggressive deck, and as a removal spell for a defensive deck is just way too clunky and unreliable, and just, yeah, I don't like that at all. I mean, obviously, once you have Seeker in your deck, you're slightly more aggressively slanted, because Seeker does a bad job of helping you with your controlling game plan and does a good job of helping you with your aggressive game plan. So Seeker and Searing Blaze definitely get better together than they would be on their own, but I'm still not a fan. Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel about it. It often does nothing and feels like crap. Because it's a creature that doesn't draw a card, which, when all of your creatures are supposed to draw a card, and like they can take a few hits and then just kill it, and then you're behind, or like not ahead at least. While all of your other creatures, if they bolt a Skyfisher, if they bolt a Glinthawk, it's sometimes a tempo loss, but it's always a card advantage gain. So that's why I like this deck, because it's more of a control deck, while also being like a mid-range deck. I mean, you can play it like a control deck, and occasionally you run people over with aggressive draws when they don't find the right answers. But if you build your deck like a control deck, you're forced into that role everywhere. And then you don't have the flexibility of switching roles whenever it fits your current situation, but you're like aggressive from the get-go, and that takes a lot of angles of attack from you. Because it's very easy to play the control deck aggressively when you have like a bunch of grand spells in your hand and a bunch of flyers on the board, but it's not very easy to play the control role with your aggro deck. So the flexibility is very open in one direction and not very open into the other. Not sure. Maybe I have to talk about it with Methodical a little bit to understand what matchups he really wants those for, like what he thinks he's addressing. But so far I remain unconvinced. Held on to this for Wrenched Mind. Though, once again, if I'm chaining stuff into each other this much, then the extra land does become useful. Like here, I would have liked to play this, and it could have been useful. Yeah, probably running it out now, so I can deal with their creatures next turn and then slam the Palisanders, and it should be a free win from there. I mean, they're just like mono black control without win conditions. They don't have any, like, not enough card advantage to outgrind me. They don't have the alternative plan of, like, Pestilence. They're just like exchanging cards until they're dead. And they're exchanging cards at such a terrible rate that they don't ever pull ahead. I mean, theoretically, like, Chainer's Edict and Shattering Red should offer some advantage, but it's just not even close to being enough. Especially not in this matchup. Like, there's a reason Thorn of the Black Rose is expensive and everyone still plays it. Okay, so that should be GG. They're dying pretty quickly to my flyers, and they are dying to this, being unbeatable. And I think I'm willing to attack. Worst case, I have to cash in some of my Alchemist Vials, which I'm also not that afraid of. And if the Garmic Angler attacks into my Thraben Inspector, I get to Galvanic Blast it down afterwards. Do I want the Skyfisher? I probably do. Yeah, I can still cast most of the stuff that I top deck here. Prismatic Strands are no longer in my deck, so the Monarch trigger won't find me anything that I'm unable to cast. And yeah, this sets up 6 damage in the air with 4 in my hand, so I only need like any more bolts to close it out. Also, I can make their blockers on the ground not block and then get this 3 damage in as well. Sure, yeah, they're just dead. Let them make an attack, even if they steal the Monarch, it's useless. Because I have 9 damage here, so I Galvanic Blast them down to 8 and they die. I would have had 3 vials to disable all 3 of their blockers, so whether they make this attack or not, they were dead on board. Well, not literally on board, but I knew that I had a guaranteed lethal. Yeah, and I do have Metacraft. No, they are dead on board. Okay.